And we're live. Welcome back to Father Shawn's Paranormal Ministry. I am his co-host Annette Munich, owner of Stellium Books, and very sorry that Father Shawn is not able to be here today. He has been on medical leave. His wife is very, very ill, and we have been asking for prayers, and also we have a GoFundMe for his wife Sharon. Her surgery is Monday, and it's a serious one. So, very much appreciated. Any donations, any prayers, all of that. Um, Hoping for, of course, best possible outcomes and a complete recovery for Sharon. There is a link in the chat room for the GoFundMe, and um, the got a card about this. I believe on GoFundMe. If you look for it, it's join Sharon Whittington's fight to beat cancer. But I will have that for sure in the link after the show as well. And that is Sharon Whittington. Thank you for joining us today. Father Shawn Whittington is a priest with the United States Old Catholic Church. You may know him from his time on Eli Roth Presents The Legion of Exorcists, which was on Travel Channel and now can be seen widely on Max and Discovery Plus. And Father Shawn is also the author of two books, God, Ghosts, and the Paranormal Ministry, Volumes 1 and 2. I always say this, excellent books, some of the scariest books I ever put out. Each chapter is one of his cases. And just really, really interesting. And that's truly another way that you can support him. I got a copy here. Another way that you could support him is by buying his books. This is volume 2. It's available on Amazon in paperback and Kindle. And also, these books are available through his website if you'd like a signed copy. God, Ghosts, and the Paranormal Ministry, Volumes 1 and 2. His website is ghostbegone.biz, ghost-be-gone.biz, and he can take care of that for you. So we have a really great guest today. I know a lot of people are looking forward to her. Camille James Harman is here. And we're going to talk a little bit about the recent disclosure, the files coming out, and we're also going to talk to her about her experience or experiences as an abductee. Camille is an actress. She resides in Los Angeles, and Camille also was a writer for UFO Magazine. And I would like to bring her on right now. Welcome, Camille.
Thank you, Annette. I'm glad to be here.
We are so glad to have you. And I'll start off with interesting times that we live in. There's no denying that. And also, maybe before we start, prayers for everybody in New Orleans and the Gulf Coast. We are 107.7 FM New Orleans and 105.3 FM Gulf Coast. And you guys are really getting hit. Lots of storms and flooding, and it looks absolutely terrible. Really, really difficult weather situations. So our prayers are with you. We also have some people saying hi in the chat room. We've got Michelle Wilfong. We've got Carl. I always give Carl a heart. He's our Bigfoot guy, and he comes on here a lot. He's more than Bigfoot. He's multi types of paranormal experiencer, and we've got Infinite Joy. with us and everyone who came and listen. We'll give the Miss America Rose. Thank you for joining us. We're so glad you're here. So, Camille, you have been here before. Wonderful conversation. Always so interesting. I thought, oh, first of all, I'll say our opinions don't reflect the opinion of UPRN or Father Shawn. We're just talking. So, I like to do that so nobody can, if they disagree with what we're saying, this is just us and our thoughts that we're sharing with the world. Um, but with the UFO UAP disclosure and the recent files, and you say whatever, comes to mind, or if you don't want to comment. But I find them, for people that really are believers, I find them a little bit underwhelming.
So you're talking specifically about the 3 tranches of files that have come out from the Department of War on the
Yes.
website. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I think you have to remember that there are a lot of people who are new to this, and they have to ease people into it, I believe, with a variety of assorted file drops. What I've noticed in the files is they've come from many different decades. Some of them are just documents, some of them are videos. And I think I understand why they're doing it, because they don't want to put things out all at once. What they like is drip, 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 right? Because it slowly gets people talking about it in the news every couple of weeks, right? If they did it all at once, it would be brought up and then it would be over. But if they do it a little bit every couple of weeks, it keeps it in the news cycle, right? And it's easing people into it, because
Right.
there's a lot that we know about, we've heard about, that the normies haven't heard about, that is just too much for them. So I do understand that's why they're doing it this way.
I do too. I knew it would be in batches. I did understand that. I think that by the third batch, there'd be something in there that I would look at and be like, whoa, but they're really not yet.
Well, there was a really good video of orbs, a color evening film with orbs, flying behind a tree, so you could see how large they were, that they were definitely not stars or anything. So
Yeah.
that was a good one.
I saw that one, and I saw one that looked kind of like a mother orb and little orbs coming out off of it, which was pretty cool. So I personally think this information's been out there for so long that if you don't believe in it, you just don't want to. Especially when we came into the advent of all of us having cameras and video, cameras in our pocket. There's so much out there. And I'm surprised because sometimes I still run into people that don't believe in it at all.
I think too, now with the age of AI, it's hard for people to be sure what they're looking at is raw data versus AI data. That's annoying. So there's that.
Well, that's another interesting thing, that now we also live in a time where there's so much as far as AI generated imagery that people are not sure what to believe about any kind of images because they think it may have been created.
Right. I think disclosure is happening on multiple levels. It is happening from the governmental level, which is fantastic. It's also happening from other governments, because once Trump administration started with the disclosure, now we have Japan dumping files. We have Brazil coming out and making public official statements about incidents that happened there. We have France doing the same. So I think that it's a cascade of, well, if they're doing it, then we can do it now. It's okay. So I think it's very exciting that it's kind of a worldwide disclosure. But I think disclosure is also happening on a very personal level for each individual person. So you're going to have people that have different variations of awakening to the non-physical worlds. And that could be all kinds of phenomena, not just aliens, whatever aliens are. They will wake up to spiritual phenomena of all kinds. And I think it's going to be interesting. And I think disclosure is coming from the people. It's coming from people like me who speak publicly about their experiences going way, way back decades. It's coming from so many experiencers who are publicly going on documentaries and podcasts, telling their stories and showing their evidence. So it's just all happening. But you know what? As excited as I am about all this, I have noticed that my body has been reacting a lot to disclosure and the escalation. And what I thought I would be like so excited and confident and ready to go. And like, I'm trying to finish my book right now. I have had so many afflictions to my health, and I have had a lot of emotional stuff come up. Like I went to see the Disclosure Day movie, right, by myself. And I had a total meltdown in the end of the film towards the end, and I could not stop crying. And I had to cry all the way into the bathroom at the end. It's a really long movie, be warned. And I came out of the bathroom and I was still crying. I was crying so much that I had to sit down in the concession area, and some people came over and asked me if I was okay and brought me some water. So I had to get my thoughts together before I could drive home. And I didn't expect that to happen. And so I think that there's a lot of processing going on the subconscious level, even amongst people like me who are so excited this is happening.
I'm also very excited that it's happening. I never kind of thought it was actually going to happen. So, because I mean, people have been talking about this and waiting for years. I don't mean to be a wet blanket about it, but I really, when people were talking about disclosure, I was like, they're never going to do this. Like, I just figured they're just not. Like, if you're waiting for one day, they're going to say it's real. Quit waiting. That was my attitude, and I'm just being honest. On the Disclosure Day, I haven't seen the movie, but I've seen a bunch of reviews and clips about it, and I thought that it was interesting that they kind of wove into the story sort of a channeling concept, sort of a religious undertone concept that I didn't expect would be in there, that it would tie into other things like that. So do you think that was, do you think anything about the movie is kind of spot on, or do you think it's very concocted? Or
I think it brings up a lot of elements of the phenomenon in one movie and I think that some of the ways they do it are good. The religious element was basically there are some nuns in the story, and the nun is confronted about this, and she has no problem with it. Like, to her, her religion encompasses anything like that, so it's not a problem for her to wrap her head around it. And there's a great book by Dr. Paul Thigpen, who's a Catholic theologian, and it's called Extraterrestrials and the Catholic Faith, or something like that. It's a really good book. It looks at not only Catholics, but all kinds of thinkers through the ages, including the founding fathers, people that lead other religious versions of Christianity and non-Christianity, and how they communicate their concerns about life off of Earth. But I think we have matured so much with our understanding of physics and computers and other ways of modeling reality. I think what's happening is we are able to encompass things like simulation theory, which is a huge theory in this, time travel. A lot of researchers believe these beings, or some of the beings, are us from the future coming back to tinker with the timeline and help us avoid certain things in the future, possibly. So and then there's the whole crypto humanoid theory, where they've been living alongside us this whole time, under the oceans, inside of the mountains, in these hiding places, and that it's nothing new. It's like a mixture of ancient aliens and religion and the latest in quantum physics and computing, all mixed together into various theories that are easier for us to wrap our heads around now. And it doesn't throw out God. It just puts it all together in a broader perspective. So I'm very interested in all that. Actually, I'm in a movie right now that just came out, a documentary called Accidental Truth Next, and I have a little visual of that. I can click it. I don't know how that works, but it's in the
Is
or
it
maybe
the
you have to do that.
is it
But
the first one?
no, it's the one of just me with a poster behind my head. You see that? No, that's not the one. Um, it's the one of me with a flowery shirt on with a blue background. You see that one?
I've got
So
that one, and I've got this one.
no, there's one more. It's the last one. I only put 3. It's the third one.
I got one. Okay, let me scroll down. I see us down here. There we go.
There, that's a plug for this documentary that I'm in right now called Accidental Truth Next. It's a sequel to one called Accidental Truth that was a big hit. And everybody's in this film. I mean, you know, Whitley Strieber and Nick Pope and the Congress people involved. And it was really exciting to be in it. My friend Thomas Jane, the actor he's in another picture with us at dinner. We all went to dinner. I'm in Hollywood Disclosure Alliance, which is a Hollywood networking group for people who are interested in UFOs. And
Nice.
so we find each other and we get cast in things like this because of being in that, which is a great thing for me because I'm very extroverted and I'm very comfortable doing public speaking about it and being in videos and such. I always have been actually since the 90s. So that's a new documentary that's out. It's on Amazon and Apple TV. You can look for it. But it does get into it. The first part's a lot about the congressional hearings, and the second part is a lot about how disclosure is coming from the experiencers, and also this concept of simulation theory and what is reality anyway? What are we living in? Are we living in some kind of matrix that was created by a being that's like a giant video game, and we're just an avatar? You know, like we're a spiritual person in this meat suit being an avatar in this simulation game. It's pretty wild. But like I said, I have found a way, as someone who believes in God and Jesus, I have put this all together and I don't have a problem with it being very biblical, but just with more scientific understanding added to the mix.
I was going to ask you about that because I've heard quite a bit of people thinking that this is going to cause people to stop believing in God. And I don't really have that conflict either, but they really think that it is going to clash with people's foundational belief system.
I think what's going to happen is it's going to expand our idea of the mechanisms God uses. I think it's going to expand our interpretation of fantastical things in the Bible that now we can put in a context with modern knowledge and say, whoa, okay, like Ezekiel's wheel, right? Wheels within wheels. And, things Jesus said about, I am not of this world, and in my Father's house, there are many mansions. And what does mansions mean? Does it mean literally a mansion for each person that goes to heaven, or does it mean many worlds? So to me, I just am able to put it all together in a comfortable way. But that's me. Other people might have a harder time with that. And I do think, because I wrestled with this and I dropped out of ufology for a long time because I thought it was all demonic, the aliens. And then I started to backtrack on that opinion. And I no longer think it's all demonic. I think that's an element of what people are experiencing. But I also think people are experiencing the angelic, and they are experiencing something else. I think that there are multiple types of beings that are not human. And so I don't like to limit it to being all demonic.
I was also going to ask you about that, because that's become very popular, that aliens are demons. And I'm, me personally, a little careful about saying that. I might say something seems malevolent or demonic without actually saying demons. And I read someone saying that demons don't need spaceships to get around, and that's a pretty good point. Mm-hmm. But lumping everything together is usually a mistake. I really think if they wanted to do us major harm, they could have done it long, long ago, but they haven't. So,
I tend to agree, and I agree that I will explain that when I was with these non-human intelligences in the abduction scenario that I was in multiple times, I never felt they were evil. I just felt, it was like a dog at the vet. I felt immobilized. I felt like I was unable to get out of the situation, and it made me angry. But I didn't feel they were existentially evil. But there was that feeling of other that was frightening, and it made me afraid. But the fear wasn't that they were evil; it was that they were not human. And I will say that I also had an experience under hypnosis. I had an out of body experience, and I did interact with light beings that were pure love and ecstasy, and yet they were not human either. They were in light body form. But with them, I felt a very powerful, emotional, positive reaction.
well, that sounds like angels. Do you think that was angels?
I think they were angels. I do. And then I had last year, I had an experience in Ireland with a ghost, I think, or it might have been a demon. I don't know. But it was my first, what I'll call a ghost. You can help me maybe figure out what it was if you're, you know, savvy about kind of trying to like determine such things. So I was awake. I slept in this house on a tour. I went on a long tour of Ireland on a bus. It was amazing and wonderful, and everything was great. But on one of the last nights we were there, we were in the city of Sligo, and we stayed at this hotel, the Clayton Hotel, which when we pulled up to it, I looked at it and I thought, this looks like a big old mental asylum from the 1800s that I see in Tartaria videos on YouTube. It was like made of stone, and it was this huge thing with wings and towers. And I asked the tour guide, like, because I was sitting kind of close to the front seat, and I said, was this a mental asylum? And she said, yes, it was a mental asylum for 150 years. I was like, oh my God, I'm spending the night in a haunted hotel. This is not good. I'm scared. And sure enough, that night I was in a room with a roommate. She was in her bed and I was in my bed, and I was awakened, and my body had full goosebumps, like a wave of goosebumps that woke me up in the middle of the night. And I was so scared. I knew something was happening, but I wasn't paralyzed. Like when I was with the so-called aliens, they had me paralyzed. I could not move. This thing did not have me paralyzed. And I also couldn't see anything. But then the next thing happened was I felt something scratching my sheets, like in the bed with me, like fingernails on my sheets scratching. And I heard it and I felt it. And so for some reason I was brave, and I am not a brave person. I am a chicken. And I put my hand down because I was on my side facing my friend in her bed, and I scratched back. I scratched on the sheets, and then I'll do it like I did. I went like scratch, 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 and then I went tap, tap, tap. Like I felt that, I was challenging it. Like why I had that bravery, I have no idea. And then it scratched back at me really fast, but kind of more aggressively. And then it poked me in the arm with one finger. And then I just lost it. I was like, oh my God. I said, stop in the name of Jesus Christ. And it stopped. And I waited, and it didn't do anything else. And I was so thankful. And I was praying, and I was like, thank you, God. Oh my goodness. And I was like, no touching, ghosts, And then I couldn't sleep, obviously. And my friend wasn't stirring through all this, even though I was yelling. And I had to lie there and wait for the alarm to go off. I didn't know what time it was. I had no clock next to me. My phone was charging across the room, and the drapes were drawn. So finally the alarm went off like a half hour later. So the ghost came at about 5 a.m. It wasn't in the middle of the night. So at least I got a good night's sleep. And I hopped out of bed and I ran over to her. I turned the alarm off and I ran over to my friend and I said, Jennifer, get up. I had a ghost. And she said, I know. I heard the whole thing. And I said, what? You didn't tell me you were awake? I was so scared. And she said, well, it sounded like you had it under control. And I said, well, yeah, but I was afraid. I could not go back to sleep. I had to pee. I was like stuck in bed being terrified still. And so we had a good laugh, and we went to breakfast, and I asked everybody there in our tour. I went to everyone's table and I said, did any of you have a ghost? Because I had a ghost, and nobody had the ghost but me. And I went to the concierge and I told them about my ghost. And I said it was in room 4105. And if you need to know this, and they looked at me like, yeah, it happens, you know. And we looked it up online, and the place is known for that. And so I wrote a report on TripAdvisor and on some other site for haunted places in Ireland. And it was interesting because I was so grateful that I was able to call on Jesus and it stopped. And what was also interesting was that morning we had gone to this famous Catholic shrine it's called Knock Shrine. And it's where Mary and Joseph and St. John and Jesus as a lamb all appeared like as a tableau outside of this church in the rain to these peasants in 1879. And they watched it for hours. Like they went into town and got their friends who came back and saw it. And it was a fascinating apparition. And so I had put holy water on myself and prayed when I had gone to that shrine. And I had the holy water on myself and everything when I went to bed, still from that morning. And then the next morning after the ghost, we went to another holy site in Ireland that's called a holy well. And it was originally a sacred well the pagans used, and then it was Catholicized, and they blessed it, and they put an altar and a stations of the rosary, and you could go there and pray. And I put that water on myself and said, thank you for saving me from the ghost. So I don't know what it was, but because I didn't see anything, I just had the scratching and the poke. But that happened. So yeah.
Well, we got a couple comments. We have Sister Jennifer OSB. I always hoped there were angels out there too. She was saying that in response to you talking about when we were saying if aliens are demonic. Mm-hmm. She said also, I think it aligns with the Bible to have visitations from the sky. We have infinite joy. She asked where in Ireland. That's because she's in Ireland. And we love that she comes here because we know it's late for her, but she often does come to the show. Carl said, I have an angel story that my mom relayed to me, without a doubt, an angel. And I love this topic. And I will say, with my time in the paranormal, which I've been not a whole lifelong experiencer, but since I was a teenager, usually when people are telling me their story, I will say, how did you feel when it happened? You can usually tell there's a shock that something happened right off the bat. Mm-hmm. But secondly, usually you can tell if something's threatening to you, right, or playing with you, or just a validation showing you that they're there. Third of all, it used to be a mental asylum. And people always say, oh, I live by this old prison. I think it's haunted. Mm-hmm. Oh, I live by this old mental asylum. I think it's haunted. In my book, they're all haunted. All of them. There's so much happened there. There's so much energy there. And I know that, again, you know, I'm also Catholic. We're told that everything is demonic. I don't believe it is, but I do believe that we shouldn't call for it. And right, I do believe that we should be mindful, not knowing what we might be dealing with, because there are stories of very malevolent, possibly demonic entities that will present themselves to look as someone that you would trust, whether it's someone you know or just something that looks very innocent, even a child. Right. And so that does happen. But having said that, if you felt threatened, oh, I have another thing about goosebumps. This is really interesting. They did a study, and our hair and hair follicles are part of our nervous system. And so that's why, like the old thing with a cat and their hair stands on end and their tail turns into a bottle brush. Mm-hmm. We do the same thing. We can bristle up our hair, the back of our neck, on our arms, all of that. Your hair is part of your...
It's an antenna. Yes, it's a detector system. Yes.
It is. And if that goes off, that is alerting you. I think that whatever you saw was probably a ghost and a not good one. The most popular EVP that people get in haunted places get out. So it's not unusual that these spirits can greatly resent people in what they consider to be their space. So there's always that, but calling the name of Jesus and that making it stop is kind of another indicator, because if it were just a harmless, regular person, um, that may not drive them out because they're not a bad entity, really.
Now, I had another time when this was before the alien stuff became known to me in 1995. This was around 1991. And I also did a regression to this to find out more. So here's what happened. I was sleeping in this dorm. I was babysitting some kids that were in a theater festival. And so I was a chaperone at night in the dorm. And I was sleeping alone in a dorm room. And I had this dream. It was a very demonic dream. And in the demonic dream, I was walking through like a rock star house as part of a film crew. And it was very weird. It was like a generic rock star with long hair, like not a specific person I would recognize. And the rock star was taking us through his house. And then he stopped at this one room and he said, "And this is my satanic room." And so, everybody walked on, and I stood in the door of this room, and it was like you would think it had like an altar, and it was black and red and had a goat head on the wall and all this. And I stood in the door. Now, this is very weird. I stood in the door and I said, "I dare you to make yourself known to me." Like, why would I say that? Dream. And as soon as I said that, that goat head came alive and it started looking at me. And then I felt like something had stuck a vacuum cleaner into my solar plexus and was sucking the life out of me, and I was going to die. And I was like in another realm. I was like in the void with this panic attack thing sucking my soul out of me. And I said, "Stop in the name of Jesus Christ." And it stopped. And I woke up and I heard wind chimes. Now, I don't know if there were really any wind chimes around that dorm, but I heard wind chimes and I just prayed. I was like, "Thank you, thank you, thank you." Oh my God. Like it saved me from this horrible, very visceral dream. And when I did a regression to that, I did get that there were beings standing around my bed that literally had a tube in me. And they seemed very demonic or reptilian in some way. So that was the only time I ever felt something extremely evil around me. For what it's worth, I'm just telling people the wide variety of experiences I've had.
And that solar plexus, that's your emotional center of your body. So that's really interesting. And I do Tai Chi. And in Tai Chi, we talk about your energy being stored in your body and that being down by your navel. And, so that whole part of your body is really very special. And you notice that when you hear bad news or when you're about to cry, it feels like a gut punch right there in your solar plexus to your navel area. And a lot of stomach issues are a result of emotions that we've stored there. And there's people that if they lay down and they rub oil into their solar plexus and down around their navel and circles, it will bring up emotions and they'll actually start crying as they release some of the stuff that's stored up there. But now I'm a little bit off track, but that's pretty interesting. It is pretty interesting.
So we can talk more about disclosure if you want, because I have a little bit more to say about it. But
we could talk some more about disclosure, and I also want to find out when your experiences started as far as abduction and how many you've had. And Carl said, "I had that happen to me on the Queen Mary."
Wow.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. I hear a lot of ghost stories from that thing. I've never slept there, but I have friends that have. So, okay, the abduction started, to my knowledge, in 1995 when I was 29 years old in Los Angeles.
Okay.
And it was very much medical, on the table procedures. It was very frightening. And I had physical evidence on my body. So that's what really woke me up to the phenomenon. However, and I also had my first UFO sighting right at that time in December 1995. But I do suspect it goes into childhood, because when I look back at the fears that I had as a child, which were paranormal fears, and the fact that I had nosebleeds so severe, I had to have my nose cauterized, and I had mystery illnesses, and I had trauma as a child, and that oftentimes is a door to these beings, or they're just, or it's maybe just a correlation. A lot of people that have this experience have childhood trauma in their lives, so that makes me think it was probably going on back then, but I just didn't. I can't remember it. And when I've tried to be regressed to go back and remember that, I don't get anything. So it's blocked if that was indeed happening in my childhood, but I think it was. Um, I used a lot of different techniques to make it stop. I went to different healers who prayed over me. I went to a Peruvian shaman who did a whole ceremony on me, and he said I had witchcraft put on me, which was very interesting. And so I also had an experience that we call a military abduction experience, or a MyLab experience. And that was very concerning because I targeted that under hypnosis because my dentist had found something in my tooth that was not normal. And so I went to my therapist and I said, let's do a regression. I want to target how I got this thing in my tooth. And I thought I would have an alien memory, right? But I had a military underground base scenario memory.
Oh,
It was very frightening because the quality of the memory was different. I felt very drugged, whereas when I was with the alien creatures, whatever they are, I felt immobilized but highly alert. Like I was super aware. I couldn't move my body. When I was with these two guys in lab coats and khaki pants in this military scenario, they called me a troublemaker and they squirted something through my jaw into my tooth. That's how they did it. And then I was taken home down a hallway into a black helicopter, and the ceiling opened up and it was very bright. And they took me to this field near my house in Los Angeles and said, go home and take a nap. So I have no memory of how they picked me up. I have no memory of how I got home from the helicopter. Like, did I have my purse? Did I have my key? How did I get in my door? What happened to my boyfriend? Like, did he miss me? Um, I don't know. It's just the most bizarre thing. But this is a common crossover into the alien abduction phenomena where the military is involved. They're keeping tabs on the abductees. Sometimes they're interrogating the abductees about what the aliens have shown them or told them. They're also looking for people that have psychic abilities that are useful to their purposes and their programs about re-engineering the craft and flying the craft. And we're learning about that now in these documentaries coming out about psionics and the military. So everything is unfolding. And I don't know what interest they had in me. The only thing I got was they called me a troublemaker and they put this thing in my tooth, and that's it. I didn't have a big long conversation with them. So I
see,
don't know what that was about, but it was terrifying. But the good that came out of it was recently Rear Admiral retired Tim Gallaudet heard me on a podcast and contacted me through LinkedIn. And he said, I'm very interested in your MyLab memory, especially because I seem to implicate the Navy, the khaki pants. And I was so shocked. I was like, oh my gosh, he's like a really important guy in the disclosure movement. He testified before Congress, and he's very involved with Ryan Graves and all these different organizations, the Soul Foundation. And so we met at Contact in the Desert, and I have a picture with him that I put up there too. And I made a whole portfolio and a PowerPoint, and I wrote up my whole story and gave it to him. And I said, here, I know you're busy, because he was speaking at Contact in the Desert. And
is this the correct one?
that's the actor Thomas Jane. The other one with the tall man,
Okay.
that's Tim Gallaudet. He's so sweet. He was there with his wife, and he gave 2 or 3 lectures. And but now he just got this past week, he was named, or the week before, he was named as part of the White House UAP task force. He and 11 people are now on a 12-person UAP task force for the White House, and I'm super excited about that. So he thanked me, and he's just, been very gracious about being interested in people that report that, because he says if these kinds of unconstitutional things are happening to people, he wants to know about it. So I just love that. I'm like so grateful that he's trying to figure out, what's going on here. So that happened recently, and I'm very excited about that.
Very, very cool. So how many times do you think that you've been taken, and the military experience, did any of that seem kind of Men in Black type thing? Because we hear about that.
Well, like I said, I don't remember being picked up or brought home except the helicopter. I didn't see men in suits, but I did have a weird thing that happened around that time when I was living in that house with my ex-boyfriend in Los Angeles. So we were in this neighborhood called Silver Lake. And I remember one night I was in the bathtub and we heard a helicopter above our house, and it was really low and it wasn't going away. It was, I don't know what it was, but it was very loud. It was so loud and it was there for so long that I actually got out of the tub and put my robe on. And I was worried there was a crime happening right around our house and we needed to be on alert. So I put my robe on, and my boyfriend and I went to the back kitchen door to the yard. And he went outside to look up at it. And we heard from the speaker on the helicopter, we heard somebody say, "He's in the backyard." And then my boyfriend ran inside and shut the door, and we locked it because we thought that meant like there's a burglar and he's in our yard,
Right.
Or the yard next door to us or somewhere right here. And so, but now I think back, I think back on that and I think, whoa, whoa, whoa. Like, what if they were saying he's in the backyard about my boyfriend and not some burglar? You know what I mean?
Did he also have any experiences?
No. And he hated the whole subject. I mean, we broke up, a couple of years after all this happened to me because he just could not deal with it. But later, we stayed friends. And later on, he told me after he did ayahuasca, he said, "I totally believe you now. I get it."
Oh, yes.
I was like, there you go. Oh, thanks. So I also have a NASA relative who worked for Werner von Braun in the 60s on the Saturn V. And I went to live with him. Part of my childhood was I was born to a teenage mother. And even though she married, they divorced. And I ended up being moved around the family and finally adopted by my aunt. But for a year, I lived with my uncle and his family in Huntsville, Alabama. And he was working for Werner von Braun on the space program. And he was career NASA. He worked for NASA until he retired, and then he passed away of COVID, unfortunately. But I would ask him about this. Of course, I'm like, "Uncle Jack, what the heck? You got to tell me if you know anything, because this is very serious." And he said, "I don't know anything. And if it's true, it's NSA, and they're never going to tell you." And then he told me a story about how he had an out-of-body experience while he was jogging, like a jogger's high, and he had an out-of-body. And he said, "I always think back on that. And it was very strange, But he said, I think you just have to get over it as best you can." And so I don't know. Later, when I became friends with Chris Bledsoe, and he has so many NASA friends now, he said, if he knew anything, he signed so many NDAs and he would have gone to prison and lost his pension and, everything bad. So even if he knew, he could not have told you, even if you were his niece and you were begging him. So you have to just forgive him for that if he knew anything. And I do forgive him for that. That's pretty serious. If you have top secret clearances and you can't say stuff to your relatives, I get it. But it makes me wonder if I got put in a program or something when I lived with him as a child, because you never know. You think about all these things, like, we hear these rumors that there was biology for technology swaps with aliens. So if we got technology from the aliens in exchange for them being allowed to abduct some people, who were those people? And why did they pick them? Was it some kind of genetic factor? Was it a soul factor? Was it because they had relatives in the military industrial complex? There are a lot of theories about that. I don't know. That's true.
Right. Whitley Strieber is someone that I read a lot of his books going all the way back to Communion in the 70s. And his stories are really amazing. And, again, it makes you wonder about, do they put tracking devices in people that they can always find you again? Like, once they've started with you, then they'll want to follow up with you. You're one of the people of their project or whatever,
Right.
and you're chosen, like you say, you don't know why you're chosen, but for some reason. And there's nothing you can do about it. There's nowhere you can run, nowhere you can hide. If they want to continue and follow up and see how you're doing, they can do that. And just a lot of theories about what they're doing and why, and potentially like egg harvesting on females,
Right.
things like that.
I had the fetus removal.
Okay.
Yeah. And a lot of my friends that have had this experience have also had that, the women, and then the men have their sperm taken forcibly. So they're definitely breeding. Now, is that because they're related to us in the future and they're trying to create some kind of safeguard against their future? Or is it to take over the earth with a bunch of hybrids? I don't know what it's for. All I know is that was so traumatizing. And I didn't want to have children for a while. I mean, I didn't have my son till I was 35. And my husband talked me into it. He had to talk me into getting pregnant. And I was so afraid in the first trimester that my son was, whether he was real or an alien baby, right? I was like, well, what happened is the pregnancy symptoms were the same as I had back then. And that triggered me emotionally, like, oh my gosh, it matches. And then, because the alien pregnancy, whatever that was, I had no menstrual cycle for 4 months, and then I had this abduction, and then it came back. So just getting through those first few months was very stressful. And I actually asked Dr. John Mack to put me in touch with a client of his that had a similar situation where she had had an alien baby before a human baby, because I wanted to talk to someone who could relate to that. And so he did, and that was helpful. But then when I was further along in my pregnancy and my son was showing, and I was like, okay, we're good. This is normal. This is not anything weird. It's gonna be okay. And I'm really glad I had my son. I only had one though. I waited so long, and it was so hard to have one child here on Earth. But it's very bizarre, and I emotionally, I do not feel connected to whatever that was they took from me. I don't think about it much. I don't know if there were more than one. I just don't want to think about it really, you know.
I feel your trauma from this. Like, I can just feel how scary all of that was. And I'm sorry for you that you went through that, and then worrying through your actual pregnancy, if something might be wrong, if something might be about to happen. That had to be terrifying.
It was, and I just, all my life, I mean, I wasn't a saint. I had a lot of boyfriends before I got married. I was sexually active, but I never got pregnant, and I never had an abortion. And so people would say to me, they're like, you must have had an abortion, and this was some screen memory for it. I said, no, I never had an abortion. So that doesn't make sense. But if I was ever late, like by 2 weeks, right, I would just go to Walgreens and get a test and know, right? And I never had a positive pregnancy test. But when I had this alien baby, whatever it was, and I just went month after month after month with no cycle. I never went to the drugstore. I never went to the doctor. I just kept waiting and waiting. That's not normal.
Right.
That's not logical.
Right.
So that was that. Anyway, I am excited about disclosure. It does make me nervous because I wonder how the world will perceive the experiencers. I wonder if we will be demonized. I wonder if we will be taken seriously. It's funny because so many of the people in the government that are on the disclosure path and speaking publicly are experiencers. A lot of these pilots that saw stuff that are in the Navy and on the ships, they were abducted also. Jim Simivan from the CIA, who works closely with Chris Bledsoe, he and his wife were abducted. Gary Nolan, The professor at Stanford who studies the brains of people injured by UFOs, he was abducted. So there are a lot of these high-level people that are talking about the science and stuff, but they don't talk about their abductions in every podcast, just some of them. But if you know, you know. So I just wonder how the people like me, who's not military, I'm an actress. I have an MFA. I'm educated, whatever. I don't have a criminal record. I was never in rehab. I don't even have any tattoos, you know? So I'm as credible as I can be for my profession. I was in an Oscar winning movie, whatever. But I just wonder as a group, and we're starting to talk like that, the experiencers, we're starting to get together and say, who do we want to be the face of public disclosure for us? Like Whitley Strieber, Chris Bledsoe, other people who've had good experiences, bad, military, all these varieties of experience. There's so many of us with amazing stories that already have books and everything. It's going to be interesting to see how the next stage of disclosure, which is about the experiencers, how that's going to unfold. And also the science continuing to discuss these things like these mind-bending things like simulation theory, time travel, alternate dimensions, that these beings come from other dimensions. Again, all this stuff is written about. You can watch any Ancient Aliens episode and you can catch up on how this has been going on for millennia. It's nothing new. People talking about being taken into other dimensions and brought back.
I really tend to, at this point in everything, and I will say, back in the day, you had to decide if you were going to talk about ghosts or UFOs or whatever it was in the paranormal, because if you were talking about two different things, then you are crazy for sure. So you had to choose. And so I chose ghosts and paranormal. But I've also seen UFOs 3 times.
Yeah.
But I'm not an experiencer, but have seen and have been a believer for a very long time. And I think that it's just, again, when you say interdimensional, that's something that gets thrown around a lot now, portals and interdimensional creatures, including spirits, could be doing this too, as well as aliens, UFOs, UAPs.
Angels could be coming through portals.
All kinds of things.
I mean, it's not all bad. And
no, it's not all bad.
I would suggest people read books by Diana Pasulka, who goes by D.W. Pasulka. She is a Catholic theologian in North Carolina, a professor who's written 2 books. One's called American Cosmos.
I'm typing it in the chat for our
Cosmic. Sorry.
American Cosmic.
And one called Encounters. And she's
her name again?
Diana Pasulka, but put D.W. Pasulka, because that's how you find her on Amazon. She does lots of podcasts too. And she, I found out about her through Chris Bledsoe. She's mentioned in his book, UFO of God. And she studies, her specialty is dealing with scientists who are having mystical experiences with beings who are downloading them with information that then they make stuff. They have patents, right? But she also studies the saints, the mystical saints, and she has access to the Vatican Library where she can go over there and get the primary source documents about Saint Teresa of Avila.
I would like to read that. I would love to read that.
Yeah. And she's like, when you read the original story that Saint Teresa of Avila said, or all these other saints before it got kind of like edited and sanitized by the church, it sounds very much like people interacting with non-human intelligences now. And so I just think there's, rather than limiting everything and saying it's all demons, I just would rather say, I think there's a variety of interdimensional beings that are non-human, that appear to people, that interact with them. Some of it's good, some of it's bad, some of it's neutral. But we seem to be in a crescendo. And I also tell people, because of my age range, I'm 59. And a lot of the people I know that have had this experience are in their 50s, 60s, and 70s. And I say, you know what? I think these beings, I think God and the beings had a timetable for this. to happen, this disclosure, and that we're all of the right age to be authority figures to help everybody else acclimate to this information. And I think God or the beings, whatever, if they wanted this to happen in 100 years from now, they would have been working on a different generation of people. But because they were working on us, and we're all now, of this age, I think it was planned in advance.
That would not surprise me, and it feels like we've gone through a lot in a very rapid amount of time. It feels almost like time speeding up. It felt for a while, a few years ago, like walking through mud, very slow. And then all of a sudden, everything picked up. And then it started to feel like, to me, my opinion, like everything was coming to the head of an abscess, festering, hot, growing, bigger. But again, these are my perceptions. But I feel that way. I didn't mean to be kind of discouraging about the disclosure, but I think, for what's come out, yes, in increments and to prepare people, but also people that have been in this community for a long time, they've already seen things to this level.
One of my theories is that disclosure can't fully happen until possibly, and this may be what the good beings have been telling people, that we need peace on earth. And I think one of the reasons politically there's been such a push for peace, to get along, like get it together. Bad guys, you need to stop what you're doing. Good guys, you need to all get along now. There could be some ultimatum that President Trump is dealing with that comes from beings. Like, you need to have world peace before we help you.
That's super interesting.
But, some kind of like urgency factor geopolitically. And when, people say, well, why doesn't he do more faster? Well, he's dealing with a lot of things right now. We got, all these wars and stuff he's trying to wrap up. And anyway, I'm just hopeful. I stay hopeful. And even though I'm nervous and my body's reacting in all these weird ways as this happens, I am excited. And whenever I get fearful, I talk to my friends like Chris Bledsoe, who makes me feel excited and loving. He's like, just stay in love frequency, pray, pray to Jesus, pray to the lady, pray to God, and just, do your thing and be in your place where you're useful and not crumbling into fear,
Right. Completely agree. And we're coming to the end of everything. So I want to give you a minute to let people know what you have coming up and where they can find you.
You can go to my website, which is my name.com, CamilleJamesHarman.com. It's Harman with an A-N, so type it with the right spelling. And then all my social media links are on there. You can see clips of me acting. You can see I have a media history list with all my interviews I've done. And you can watch me in Accidental Truth Next right now, and other things that I've been in as far as podcasts and documentaries. And I don't have any acting projects about to come out right now, but you can poke around and look at all those too on my website.
Fabulous. And if you would hang around for just 1 minute after the show, I have something to ask you about. Okay. I want to thank everybody for listening. Thank you so much for being here. We just love our chatters. Remind everyone again about the GoFundMe for Father Shawn's wife, Sharon. Join Sharon's fight to beat cancer on GoFundMe, and her surgery is on Monday. Besides that, we have a new book out. I'm going to show that really quickly. Ricky Raccoon's Mystery Agency, and this is for kids maybe up to the age of 6 years old. Very, very cute story. I highly recommend. Also, we have next week Susan Ahern is back for our Happy Medium monthly. She comes on the last Friday of every month. And also, please stay tuned to Spirit Switchboard with Carrie Lynn Shellhorn. And that's what's coming up next. And Camille, thank you so much.
You're
And
welcome.
I hope that you come back and hang out with us again because it's really, really been interesting. And I knew that it would be.
Oh,
I
thanks
just
a lot.
knew. I knew from when you've been on before, an hour just kind of scratches the surface, really. So I hope that you will come back and hang out for 1 minute. And we're getting people saying thank you and great show. Thank you guys, and thanks for joining us. Have a great night and a great weekend, and we'll be back next week. Thank you.